The opinions expressed in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Time Warner Cable.
What's your tomorrow?
I'd like to call this work session to order. We had a public forum scheduled at 5:30. I don't know if there's anyone who would like to speak before the board tonight. Seeing none, we will move to our
didn't stick around.
agenda. First will be our teaching and learning work session, and that'll be facilitated by Ed Dorf.
May I make a motion? Actually, yeah.
Oh, sure.
In the 12 hours she's been here without us, she's reordered the agenda. Go for
I'd
it.
like to make a motion to order the agenda. So we will take up 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, F, G, and then 1A.
So really, you're just moving A from
no,
first to
we-
last?
Yes.
No, we
Okay.
Yep.
actually, yeah, I'd like to do the
You want to do
pathways before the policies.
pathways before policies. Okay, so that's 1B, C, D, A, then E, F, G.
Yep.
B,
C, D, A, then E, F, G.
5, 6,
That would allow people who don't need to stay for the whole meeting
to
to.
leave.
To go.
Okay. And then the organizational stays the same.
Thank
Do I
you.
have a second?
Second.
See, you could have ran it.
I could have.
We could have.
But that just made me feel guilty because it's not a one-woman show.
Oh, since when? That would have been your biggest.
At least when I'm out in public, it's not a one-woman show.
Oh, yeah.
I would have supported her.
You would have. It would have been a two-woman show.
All right.
Do you need to call that or what?
Do
Yeah.
we need a, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead,
All in favor?
Sandy.
Here.
No, you're,
No, you're not.
approving
You
the
are, but you're
motion.
saying yes. You're saying aye. It's going to go well. I just sense it.
Jeffries,
Yes.
Maloney,
Yes.
Warren,
yes.
Selecta,
Yes.
Dorf,
Yes.
Becker.
Yes.
All right, carried 7-0. We have reordered the agenda, and I will turn it over to Ed Dorf again.
Okay, so several discussion items. We'll start with Head Start 2016-17 continuation of the application. Mark?
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll start you out with a little bit of an easy one. We've received determination from the Administration for Children and Families that we are again eligible for the grant. The document that you have there, both in memo and in format outlines what we've received. This is very similar to what we've received over the last several years. There's no significant changes to this. We've fluctuated in terms of this being something that just seeks approval at a board meeting. We decided to bring it forward for discussion, and we're asking for approval at the next board meeting. So at this point, I just turn it over to questions that you may have. We have both Ann Barsh, Executive Director for Elementary Education, and Sally Jensen, who is our administrator that oversees Head Start in the district as well, available to answer any questions.
If you wouldn't mind, just briefly mention some of the things that the grant will be used for, and if they're the same as before or anything different.
And we did receive the same dollar amounts last year. We've also been informed there will be a cost of living increase, but we haven't received a letter as to how much that will be. We heard in the area of about 1.3%. But when creating the budget, I always start first with personnel, salaries and benefits, next transportation, and then supplies for the classrooms, field trips, updating technology, computers, any additional equipment that's needed, and then we have a $30,000 training budget that we use for, we create a training plan, and we consider the needs of our parents as well as our staff, seek input from them when we create the plan, and that $30,000 is separate from the operating budget. And any dollars not spent, of course, need to be sent back. So we, especially this time of year, are looking monthly, weekly sometimes at that budget to see how it is going to end the year and plan for spending by June 30th to get all those dollars spent.
Other questions? Anything else on that?
The last thing I just mentioned is we do need a signature by Board President Brenda Warren at the conclusion of the vote for the next one. So we'll make sure we get that information to Sandy to have that signed at that point.
Yeah, I have it, but we can't sign it until the 8th.
Correct.
Till the vote.
Yep.
Yep.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you, Sally.
Then we have health content essential documents. K-12 health content essential documents.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce this one as well as Mike Freeze and Eric Kahn come to the table. We have two course or content essential documents that we're asking for approval, and that's the governance request. I would give you a brief introduction around both of them. Just a quick review that this is a process that we engage in. It's about leveraging our leadership and the stakeholders. We did have a good sampling of teacher leaders that were here at 5:30, but we sent them home. But we got some insights that they felt they wanted to share tonight, so we'll try to capture those. But they certainly would be available that if we have questions from the board table that you want them to react to, they're prepared for that as well. We can facilitate that information. So introduce Dr. Nancy Chartier, Michael Freeze, Executive Directors of Teaching and Learning, and Eric Kahn, our curriculum coordinator that worked on these projects. So I'll turn it over to the team at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Well, we come before you this evening to propose the adoption of a comprehensive pre-K-12 health education written curriculum. At the elementary level, the essential learnings will definitely bring clarity for our educators around what children need to know and be able to do around the content area of health. Important work is ongoing as the Teaching and Learning Department continues their work, collaborative work with Student Services to update the district school counseling curriculum as well. Because secondary curriculum was updated in recent years, they were able to actually dig a deeper dive and digging into the in-depth of the whole continuum of pre-K-12 alignment within our district curriculum. At the secondary level, nothing will be changing as far as our intro to sixth grade course, as well again as it being offered in 8th grade or in their high school experience. Our work will continue beyond this work we're presenting tonight, as we are all aware that we will be digging into our wellness policy and reviewing and revisiting that, as well as reconvening our Human Growth and Development Committee. Both of those groups will definitely help us to steer our direction in elementary health and to what level and that the board wishes us to take us into as far as our course of action. So with that being said, we do absolutely look forward to continued conversation in the area of health, and also the opportunity to work collaboratively and also update you along the way. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over now to Mr. Eric Kahn, who will definitely do a great job in explaining the process that was followed in the development of the health curriculum.
Thanks. To give you some background, the current curriculum for elementary and middle school health was last revised in 1999, and the high school health was revised in 2002. Since then, the Wisconsin standards were updated in 2011. State statute required revisions to human growth and development units, and recently a bill was passed that would require CPR and instruction about AEDs in high school health courses. These curriculum documents serve to ensure consistent progression of health expectations between elementary grade levels and within the secondary courses. Our elementary team began with K2 and grades K2 and 3-5 standards. Because the elementary standards are banded, the team began by determining how to build students' knowledge and skills to meet the grade 2 and grade 5 expectations by either gradually releasing teacher support, adding complexity, or emphasizing certain topics. Additionally, there is overlap among the health, physical education, and counseling standards. So health curriculum is not a standalone subject area, but it is embedded in the regular classroom, physical education, and with school counselors. The secondary team did not need to break apart the standards as there is one health course at each grade level. However, the secondary did spend their time aligning between the 6th grade and high school course, and as well with the secondary curriculum and the previously developed elementary curriculum. Overall, because the state standards only describe general health content, both teams identified specific topics to be covered at each elementary grade level and in the secondary courses. I do want to commend all the members of both committees for their hard work and dedication to developing a quality curriculum. Throughout my work with both teams, they showed drive to help students develop the knowledge and skills for lifelong health and wellness. We are currently in the process of investigating resources. The next step for elementary teachers will be to collaborate in their buildings as they create integrated units. For all grade levels, we will provide professional development related to implementing the new curriculum, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I think we have some. Celestine,
Thanks. So Nancy, I was glad to hear you talk about a Human Growth and Development Committee. You know, last month and this month and just for a little while I've been thinking about the fact that we have these content essential documents, we do curriculum, and yet we never really discuss developmental milestones. And you know, we are dealing with young people, and so, you know, no, this is just a comment. There's no reason, you know, you don't have to respond. But I think I'd like to see more in the future about developmental milestones, especially K3. But quite frankly, I mean, there are developmental milestones all along the way until a child turns 18 and 25, depending on which ones you're looking at. So just a thought for future reference.
Can I?
Yes.
I was asking for
Yes.
clarification. So, are you asking for, because it's insinuated in the curriculum documents that you're following developmental milestones. So are you asking for it to be in the curriculum document or part of the curriculum, either the course essential documents or curriculum presentations?
Part of the presentation.
Okay.
Because I agree, I think that, you know, it is assumed because
You can
a lot
tell
of
it's
the
in there, yeah.
It is,
Right.
right. It would be just nice for us to have some reference points along the way about
That makes
Yeah.
how children develop.
Sure.
And why certain things are taught at certain
Correct.
ages and not at
Yes,
others. Yeah,
that's right, yes. I think that's good for the public.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, going to Eric, and you had said some of this too, just in terms of the curriculum for the high school, there's nothing about vaping in here. So it says substance abuse, like, okay, so I'm on page, what page am I on? I'm on page 24. Health and wellness course overview. And it says substance abuse information and prevention.
22 would also have that.
Okay, yes, it does. And so it talks about tobacco, but not about vaping.
And in the more detailed content documents we are developing with the teams, they did have vaping in there,
Okay.
but for the abbreviation for this sheet, that was just something that was left out.
Okay, great. And then the last thing, Eric, that I wanted to talk about was when I think about this, and granted, this is topics at a glance, right? But when I look at some of the topics, they feel very negative to me. They don't feel like health. They feel like descriptions of disorders. So, for instance, mental health. So stress management, anger management.
Page
That's
you
good.
on?
24.
Oh, you're still on the same page?
Yep, yep,
There,
yep.
Okay, thanks.
That's good. That seems positive. It seems like something, you know, that's forward thinking. But under mental health, we have mental illness, depression and suicide, eating disorders, death and dying, bullying. Now, these are all issues that I think young people need to to discuss and learn about. But then it just, as I was reading, I thought to myself, okay, well, aren't there some other things that students should be learning that are affirmative in terms of not protecting themselves from things that are going to harm them, but rather to find the things that will actually help them, like management of stress, anger. I can't think of other things off the top of my head right now. Same thing with substance abuse information and prevention. I do think that that's all important. I don't know.
So is the question around where are things that are more positive,
Yes.
mental, or more positive wellness?
Yes.
Specific issues? Yeah. So former psychology teacher, the positive psychology experiences, whether those might be, but the proactive
Right.
types of focus area.
I mean, shouldn't the students, this is an opportunity for them, either in 8th grade or freshman year mostly,
Yeah.
to have these conversations. Some
Yeah.
of our students don't have these conversations in their homes. It's a great opportunity for them to have these conversations amongst their peers and with a trusted, knowledgeable adult.
Sure.
Shouldn't we be giving them something positive?
Do you recall where any of those specifics are? Are they in that wellness section, or would you have to go back and take a look at that area?
I'd have to go back and take a look and see on the detailed sheet
Yeah.
how the teachers describe it.
I think if you drew from the course description, that type of language is in there. When they talk about learning and practicing skills to promote healthy norms.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's look into some examples that we can provide you as an update. I think that's fair, and then we can take a look at where that may be.
Sure.
Yeah,
I would offer another area as a corollary to
Yep.
that would be in the substance abuse information prevention dialogue, trying to discuss how do we frame that up, because substance abuse can come as a result of misusing prescription medication, which is intended to help with health and wellness, versus street drugs or club drugs or illegal drugs. So trying to balance, how do you frame it up and how do you package it and what's the overall heading? That's been a rich dialogue that we'd like to revisit as well as part of that conversation.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's something that I think it's important, and we try to grapple with how do you frame it up in our modern society, and the purpose and intent of the standards, and what's the reality for the students face. So
Right.
And then finally, with the human growth and development, this is a question, this seems very adolescent related, as opposed to what happens when they're finished with adolescence. So is that on purpose, or is it meant to be the entire life cycle, or?
Well, what's in here are just the topic headings that are currently in the Human Growth and Development curriculum that was developed by the committee, or that was run by the committee.
Okay.
So we didn't change anything in there until the committee re-meets.
Okay, oh, I see,
Yep.
okay, all right.
And that committee, I believe, came forward in 2012-13, so that was done after, that's when Nancy talked about, there's gonna be an additional phase where that would get discussed.
Correct.
In full, and which is what you said
Absolutely.
first.
We'll need to
Okay.
bring that recommendation to you after the conclusion of that committee work.
Okay.
We will be working on that, and you can expect it in the probably fall months.
Okay.
In which we will be prepared. That's a rather large committee that gets together and does review what the teachers are using and make recommendations to us what would be a more effective resource to use as part of our implementation of human growth and development. And at the elementary level, and I'm most certain that at the secondary level, that it's all wellness. And so it's not necessarily, it's any component of safety, feeling safe, as well as the human growth and development elements of the curriculum. So any mental illness, so on and so forth, that's all part of it. Protective behaviors discussed. And that's where we have our clergy members, our physicians, our teachers, our parents, our students. It's, the committee is made up under state statutes, pretty much outlines who will be part of your committee.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, that does it, thank you.
Part of what I thought you were leaning to without being negative and I hope we learned from the past. Years ago, it was preached the danger of drugs in health classes. I mean, kids showing all these different pills and what the actual pills. And all it did is show the kids what to go look for, which they did. So that had reverse effect, and I know your psychology background, you're taking that into account with all this. I'm interested in not only that, I appreciate that being said by Ms. Jeffries, but also, especially at the elementary level, how literacy is brought into this and how we support literacy. Because again, if we keep saying literacy is that important, and we should be focused towards that in every area of the curriculum.
Sure, and as far as in the elementary, because this is embedded in different, with different areas, particularly in the classroom with the integrated units, they're able to integrate the literacy aspects through the use of health content, whether it's the use of reading materials or assignments they use related to those. So as we were having our conversations, a lot of it came back from the teacher's perspective is how they could incorporate that into their already existing lessons where they have literacy built in, whether it ties to science, whether it ties to social studies or elements like that.
I guess I'd like to expand on the pieces, not only the reading component of literacy, but also the writing. So when we're looking at our information writing, we're looking at our opinion and argumentative writing and our narrative writing. Definitely can bring components of the content area of health into the writing aspect of literacy.
In parallel with what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions? Katie?
No, I don't. Thank you.
The other content area we bring forward tonight would be physical education. And this has been also a multiple-year process involving numerous district curriculum coordinators and teams of teachers. And earlier, Mary Buchholz was here as part of the team. We'd publicly thank her for her efforts previously in getting the ball rolling relative to this. What Eric's going to talk to you about physical education tonight will be the course and content essential documents for physical education as well. These are really the foundational pieces that we'll be using to ensure that we have guaranteed and viable curriculum that all students have access to. And although these are just, again, the foundational pieces, it's important to mention that we are considering their role within the overall system. A number of topics have been brought forward to the board in recent months, as well as will be brought forward in the future in line with other initiatives which will impact our decision-making around physical education. So for instance, whether in conjunction with scheduling changes, improvements or changes in our facilities, options that we have for coursework completion in summer months, increased access to and the availability of technology. We do know that these foundational pieces will help us be flexible in terms of the specific courses and opportunities our students have with regards to a modern fitness-based physical education curriculum. So with that being said, Eric can talk a little bit about the physical education specific aspects of it.
So to give you the background on the physical education, the current curriculum that the district uses for physical education was last revised in 2004. Since that time, the Wisconsin standards were updated in 2010, and the national standards developed by the Society of Health and Physical Educators were updated in 2011. These national standards align directly with the existing Wisconsin state standards and provide grade level specific outcomes in physical education for grades kindergarten through 8th grade. Developing curriculum from the national standards has provided greater clarity and specificity for physical education courses. The state standards are grade banded, specifying outcomes for grades pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, and 9th through 12th. The national standards provide grade level outcomes, as I mentioned, from kindergarten through grade 8, with knowledge and skills being continually developed in all grades. The high school outcomes describe 2 levels, which allow students to develop foundational knowledge and skills across all areas, as well as focus on developing in specific areas of interest or skill. The goal of physical education is to guide students in developing the knowledge and skills to lead a physically active lifestyle. In elementary school, students learn the foundational skills and knowledge. In middle school, they apply the knowledge and skills in games and fitness activities. And then high school students focus on using the knowledge and skills in lifetime activities and finding activities in which they can participate in order to be physically active adults. The current district physical education curriculum matched the organization of the state standards, providing learning outcomes for grades K through 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. The proposed curriculum specifies expectations for grades pre-kindergarten through 9th grade and the high school elective courses. Having specific outcomes for student learning at each grade level will allow teachers to more accurately assess student learning. In addition, the proposed middle and high school curriculum describes fitness activities, which are included in all courses, and general types of games and recreational activities, which allow individual schools to meet expectations based on their school's facilities and resources. Again, I want to commend the members of the many committees for their hard work, dedication to quality curriculum, and persistence in working through challenges. Throughout my work with all these teams, their passion for and commitment to lifelong physical fitness for students was continually evident. We are currently in the process of investigating resources for middle and high school courses. The next step for the elementary teachers will be to collaboratively create units based off of the curriculum. For all grade levels, we will provide professional development related to implementing the new curriculum. And so we're happy to answer questions.
Questions? I have a question on, talk a little bit more about, at the high school level, it says 2 proficiency levels. So elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. So what the new national standards did is instead of having just one block of high school standards, they gave what they call level 1 and level 2. And they said level 1 is what the minimum they would expect students to meet to be proficient in physical activity. And then level 2 was more specific. So we took level 1 and aligned physical education 9 with all the level 1 standards. And so in the electives then, every elective is aligned with different combinations of the level 2 standards, whether they're a fitness activity like strength training or personal fitness, or if they're games and recreational activity.
Can you give any specifics? Talk about PE 9 again. What pick something out and talk
Sure.
about.
Let me.
What is a level 1 proficiency level in a given area?
I think as Eric kind of looked, I think one of the things that we see is that the initial course in high school is kind of a foundational survey course. It's intended to ensure that we've got a base level of, safety, form, fitness, literacy in physical education relative to, understanding game terminology, team terminology, sportsmanship, etc. And then a second level where kids get to kind of tailor their interest in the elective areas to fulfill their additional credits, allows them to kind of focus on what they're more interested in. So you may have students who are very into individual or dual or personal fitness exploration or recreational and team areas to try to target where they want to head. I think ultimately, based on some of these other district level initiatives and work that's being done, we'd like to look at what would be some possible kind of capstone experiences in physical education, whether it results in certifications via lifeguarding, hunter safety. Would we be able to coordinate anything with NWTC or GB that would be a foundational course there? Because we would like there to be a culminating opportunity in physical education, but it's contingent on some other things happening. So we didn't want to get carried away in this first bringing forward of these documents. So we kind of left it with the level 1, level 2 pieces according to national standards.
And so, for an example, one that sticks out in my mind that we had a lot of conversation around with the teams is on with the personal fitness elements. So, for example, can they create their own personal fitness plan? Would be a level 1. If I had 9, we want them to be able to look at it individually for themselves. But in level 2, they're starting to think about other people. Can you create a fitness plan based on somebody else's status? So it's not just getting them to think about somebody else, but getting them to think about the different ways the different personal fitness pieces fit together.
Okay, thank you. It's going to be interesting to see when it all rolls out.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we'll do that again.
Thank you.
Good work.
And now we're going to go to item A, right?
Yes.
Customized career pathway. Yep.
Thank you.
And Lori.
Well, it's our pleasure to be here tonight. Most of you know Lori Peacock, who is Director of College Career and Community Readiness, first year in that official role and doing very well. What we wanted to do tonight was just share with you, we've been to the board with a number of items over the last couple years that you've approved, such as City Stadium, Baylink Manufacturing, recently, King's Engineering, Children's School for Engineering. And we really kind of gathered from the feedback that you had, as well as some of the questions that arose, that maybe we haven't done a very good job of actually helping you understand the process that we go to and through to get to the place where we come to you. And then we also are hoping tonight that maybe we can get some feedback from you on how would you like us, when we are engaging in a customized career pathway, are there other places in that process that you would like us to come to you more formally, to have conversations and provide feedback, versus kind of the way we've been coming is either through a workshop or a board retreat, or we've provided you with information in an update. And are there other times in that process that you would like us to come to the board table formally and share where we're at before we move too far down the road of developing the pathway? So those are kind of our two purposes tonight, okay? So first of all, if you recall, and sharing for our audience as well, a reminder that our mission statement is that we educate all students to be college, career, and community ready, inspired to succeed in our diverse world. And we keep that mission in our forefront as we work through this process. In addition, from that, we've worked together and worked with you as a board, and we kind of developed those 4 district priorities. 1, academic excellence, 2, personalized pathways, 3, engagement, and 4, a thriving workforce. We really see the development of these customized education pathways as falling under number 2, customized career pathways. If we were going to have a conversation about number 2 that was bigger than just this little piece of the pie, we would have teaching and learning at the table. This might not fit what you're following along. We kind of added a slide to help for the background.
To clarify, I
we'll get
knew
there.
that. All right, okay.
Yeah, if we were going to talk about number 2, we would have a lot more people at the table than just Lori and I, because we would have teaching and learning, special education, ELL, all of those other departments that fit into developing those personalized pathways. So we're really just one piece of that big overall district priority, okay? So again, just a little history for you. So far as a board, you've approved Baylink Manufacturing, City Stadium Automotive, Bridges Construction, Children's Center for Engineering. Way back in the quadrant days when I was a quad lead, you approved some of the things we're working on in the Southwest Quadrant with welding and some of the pathways there that we're continuing to grow. And I would say that right now, in our mind, and we're going to explain this phase to you in a minute, we're kind of exploring Wequiak Elementary School from an environmental perspective, Elmore, manufacturing leading into West. And then there's a large group that's working on a career and technical education strategic plan. And the reason that we put that up there for you is because it'll come into play when we talk about where do some of our ideas actually come from. So what I see is as that career and technical education strategic plan group is working, they're kind of doing a gap analysis. Where are we maybe missing a pathway, a career pathway, that we could be developing or looking at as we do that, and then how do we respond to that? All right. Lori's going to give you just a little background, and it's for you as a board, but also for our audience that might be watching or goes back and watches, just so you kind of understand when we develop these pathways, kind of where they're coming from and where they live. So, all yours.
All right, thank you. So the one thing that we wanted to start with is just to make sure that we had a common definition of some of the language you're going to hear us use the next couple of slides, and one of them is career cluster. Currently, sorry.
That's okay.
So the reason that you want to understand career clusters is because career clusters promote the connection between education and the workforce and economic development. They provide a seamless transition from high school to college. They focus on high skill, high demand, and high wage careers, and they increase the emphasis for our students on attaining technical skills. There are 16 very broad career clusters and 79 career pathways. This slide should, yes.
The 16, is that, who defined the 16? Where did that come from?
That came through the National Association for Career and Technical Education, and I believe the date on that was like 2001.
I thought I saw DPI in there, DPI.
Right, so it all rolls down, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. There's a great website out there too called wisconsincareerpathways.org that has a great explanation of career pathways, career clusters, programs of study, some of the things that you're going to see here. So the next few slides that we're going to introduce to you have been developed by Lisa Johnson, who's our CTE coordinator and works in the teaching and learning department, so I want to give her credit for that. And what we're going to do is go from very broad to very specific. So if you look at the diagram, which on the screen is on the left-hand side, a career cluster, remember our 16 career clusters, is very broad. Within those career clusters, there are 79 different pathways. Some career clusters have more pathways than others. Within the career pathway then is a program of study. And the program of study is the sequence of instruction that provides preparation for a career. And I'm going to get a little bit more specific with you in the next slide. And then each student has their own individual learning plan, which for our purposes will be changing to each student's individual academic and career plan to align to the new work that we're doing there. So again, think from broad to narrow. So if you look at the diagram on the right side of the screen, architecture and construction is a career cluster. Construction is a career pathway. Building construction is a program of study, and the student might say, I want to be a mason, I want to be a cabinet maker, I want to be a construction manager. So that's how that goes, again, from the very broad to the very narrow. Here's another example of a career cluster, again, using architecture and construction. There are two career pathways shown there. One is design and pre-construction, which will lead to a program of study of architecture. On the other side is construction as the career pathway, and that will be leading to building construction, masonry, or a finish carpenter. What that means for the student is there are 4 different levels. And level 1, as you can see, is the broad exploration phase. And you can see that some of the work is being done in middle and early high school. And as you move through the levels, the student goes from a broad understanding to really applying it to what is it that I want to do. And then finally, what we have in this diagram is it shows the progression from middle school through post-secondary with the opportunities that lie not only in work-based learning, but also in the post-secondary area. So a student that is interested in masonry may then select in their junior and senior year courses that are completely aligned with that career interest area. They might do a youth apprenticeship, they might do some kind of work-based learning that offers them an opportunity to explore whatever their personal academic and career plan has for them.
So this is the part where we're kind of walk you through what we, as we lead the development of these career pathways that are customized, kind of the phases that we see ourselves go through. And there are 8 phases that in our mind, we kind of do that checklist of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And as we go, when I get to the end, I'm probably going to recommend to you that you think about what it would look like if we came to you formally, not in a work retreat or board retreat or through an update, after the explore stage, and then possibly again before we get around the discovery phase. So just be thinking a little bit about that as we move through. The first phase is obviously the idea phase. And that means that someone has an idea, either through that gap analysis that we're doing through strategic planning. It might be a parent or a student, a school interest, a particular building. A post-secondary institution might say, hey, you should be doing more with construction. Business and industry might tell us that. And then there might be a labor market demand. So this idea phase isn't just that we get out of the clear blue sky, somebody who sends something and says, hey, you should do this. It's really, where are the ideas generating from? And then we kind of go through that checklist of, is this a good, viable idea? And should we be exploring it? It might be a conversation at our learning support team. It might be a conversation at cabinet. It might be, you know, something that comes out of a task force somewhere. But the ideas can kind of come from a variety of places, okay? Then we move into what we believe, and I'll use Wequiak as an example if I can. As we look at exploring Wequiak as a potential place-based learning for environmental sciences, that idea kind of is coming out of the people who are at the nature-based 4K, the parents, the families, and our learning of saying, where do my students go next? You know, they've had this wonderful environmental science learning environment, and now how do they expand upon that? So we kind of started looking at what might be some options. So that's just an example of one place where it maybe was somewhat parent-driven or driven by a community partner, versus a gap analysis that we were doing in the district. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Then once we get through the idea and we're like, yep, we like the idea. We think it's a viable, you know, an idea that we should look at. We enter into what we consider the explore phase. And I'm going to let Lori talk to you about what that means.
So the first thing that we do in the explore stage is we dive into what has already been done, what's out in the research. We do a lot of reading. The internet is our friend. We try and find as many best practices that are currently existing. And then from those best practices, we select anywhere from 2 to 4 places that we will take a small team and do a visit. So for instance, when we built Baylink Manufacturing, we knew that the best practice model in our state was Cardinal Manufacturing. So we took 2 vans and a carload, 3.5 hours to the other side of the state to look at that best practice model so that we had a good understanding of really what we needed to do. Professional development plays a huge role in the explore stage. We need to understand what our teachers currently know, but then we also need to understand what additional information, what additional teaching and learning opportunities do we need to provide with them. As you know, based on the fact that we have come to you with programs like Baylink and City Stadium Automotive, there's a large discussion with business and industry and our post-secondary partners. We call that 3-legged stool. We have to understand it. We have to understand our post-secondary partners, and we also need to understand the needs of business and industry. We work with teaching and learning, doing a curriculum review and any development that needs to be done. And then we discuss what we know based on our explore process.
So once we kind of end with that explore process, our past practice has been that we've usually brought you something in a board retreat, let you know something through the update, and then we kind of move into that discovery phase. Discovery phase for us is where we really start to dig in and things get bigger. So we kind of talk about where we're at, where are we going, we start to envision the future, what could this look like. We start developing the career pathway K through 16. We look at the employment opportunities, and we really start to dig in and develop that project plan. So if we were to move forward with this, how would it affect business services? How does it affect human resources? How does it affect teaching and learning? How does it affect every department, facilities, technology? And we start to pull all of that together into a project plan so that we can see the overall effect that it's going to have on the district as a whole. Not just our department, but every other department. And we have a document that we have to put that into and price things out fiscally, and then also look at that, what effect does it have on the resources, the human resources, and all of those pieces. So I'll go back and bring up the East Fine Arts Institute. When we were doing that to kind of figure out how to roll out Webster and the pieces that would feed up into the Institute, we brought a group of people together and kind of worked through that project planning document so that we weren't missing pieces and missing departments. We do the same thing for Baylink. We've done the same thing for City Stadium Automotive. Okay? And then at that point, we start to kind of get into getting ready for that implementation, and that's usually where we end up in front of you with asking for your approval, okay? So implementation includes curriculum, professional learning, facilities, resources, technology, all those departments that I just talked to you about. It's usually presented either to our learning support team, which is facilitated by Mark in the teaching and learning department, and then it has to have approval by our cabinet before it comes to you at a board level. Okay? Then obviously, implementation plan.
That's the best part. So one of the things that as I look through this, that I think we neglected to talk about even in the planning for implementation is our business and industry partners and post-secondary partners play a big role in that as well. So when we come to you with the implementation plan, we're finalizing the budget. We have a good idea of what it's going to cost. And as you know from other programs that we've implemented, many times we also have community support through sponsorships as well as post-secondary sponsorships. We work with Lori Blakesley and her team on implementing a communication plan. That includes things like a logo, brochures, press conference, all of the things that you have seen us do, and then continuing to work with Lori on the long term of how do we keep and continue to repackage these programs to keep them fresh in the minds of our students and our teachers and our families. Facility renovation begins, so if you were around last summer, you know that we knocked down a wall at East High School to build City Stadium Automotive, dug up the floor. It's always Mike Stengel doesn't like to see me coming anymore because he knows that there is work to be done. But that's a very exciting phase to go from where we were to where we're going. We purchase a lot of equipment. Again, teaching and learning is involved with any of the curriculum needs that we have in professional development. Professional development continues, and then one of the key factors in this process is having a business and industry advisory team. We also include our post-secondary partners. That keeps it real for us, and it really keeps it relevant so that we are really taking the classroom into the community, but also inviting the community into that classroom.
And we're getting closer to the last phases, but phase number 7 is really that measurement and assessing. So continuous improvement. We're constantly looking at the programs, what's going well, what do we need to improve upon. I can give you one example for Baylink Manufacturing. We have an advisory team that meets once a month. It includes Lori and I, it includes the principal, the teacher, the community partners, other staff, and we are always looking at where are we on our measurable outcomes, how can we improve, how can we get better, what's going well, so we continue that process. We started to do the same thing with the Bridges Construction and Renovation Program and learned that we really needed to take a step back, go through some of these phases that maybe we didn't go through the first time things moved along quickly about 4 or 5 years ago. And we're starting to go back and figure out some of the pieces that got missed. So that's that continuous improvement cycle. And then finally, we have to figure out how we're going to sustain. So phase 8 is sustaining the program, keeping it aligned to the district's mission and vision, looking at the school success plans and how do they have this pathway incorporated into those, looking at our guaranteed and viable curriculum, how are we continuing to move that, post-secondary career pathways, continuing to look at the labor market demand and make sure that if our students go through the pathway, there's going to be a career for them at the end, and then figuring out what those advisory teams, what their roles and responsibilities are when we sustain. I'll give you an example, Baylink Manufacturing, and I think Lori can attest to this. Lori and Andy came to the advisory team with a proposal. Hey, here's what we think we want to do next. This is our plan, and here's what we're going to do. And the advisory team, including the community members, were like, are you sure that's what you want to do next? Because here's what we, from the business world, see that would either work or maybe wouldn't. And we had to really take a step back and go, yeah, maybe that isn't the next step that we want to do, because we got feedback from that advisory team of, wait a minute, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So not that they make all the decisions, but they really do advise us and have been very helpful. So those are the phases that we go through. I think, I was asked the other day, are you going to have a recommendation? And I do. I feel like perhaps when we get through that exploration stage, when we feel we've explored the opportunity the best we can and we have as much information that we have, it might be a good idea for us to come to you formally in a workshop environment like this, have the conversation, tell you what we found out through our exploration, and then get some feedback from you on whether or not you think that would be a good direction for us to go, and give us some feedback. From there, then, we could move into the next phases, knowing that the board is in support and kind of understands where we're headed, pull together all the pieces from the discovery phase before we come back to you again for a recommendation and approval formally for the pathway. That's kind of our recommendation, but we just want to see what your feedback is and if you think that's enough, soon enough, enough times.
Kim, I like the earlier involvement by the board because way it is now, after the project, you've done project planning, then you come to the board, and it's really almost too late for the board to approve, well, it's not too late to approve, but reject, modify, suggest an alternative. And I think maybe at that time we're almost hesitant to do that because, well, staff has put in all this time. But so I really like the earlier report to the board, and then we can, I think, maybe give you some ideas that you can incorporate into your planning. So
Yeah.
I like the earlier involvement.
And I think we can do that more formally. I think we felt we were doing at the board retreats in the past, but it was more of an informal environment. And maybe then, if you can do it formally, it also gives us an opportunity to hear from the students, and we don't hear from them at a retreat. And some of the other people that are in the room.
Because one of the things you mentioned was the Weequahic, which I don't think we've heard about, because I think informally a year or two ago we were talking about Baird for that program following the,
Michelle and I went back and I know that part of what stemmed this presentation was the Weequahic piece, and I went back and looked in my notes, and we did bring that to a board retreat. I know Michelle has brought it to you through some of her goals and some of the things that she's, brought from her evaluation process. But when I looked at it, I'm like, maybe we just didn't have enough meat at the time, that it seemed more conceptual for you, that it actually seemed like we were moving down the path.
It didn't stand out.
Yep.
And I think that that's the piece. The intentionality of this makes greater sense, and I can certainly appreciate and understand that, and that's why I'm glad we're having the conversation to go back and look, because we wouldn't, I think that we thought we were doing that, but if we were missing the mark, that's what continuous improvement is all about. Better
it was good feedback. The Weequahic piece, I think, was good feedback, because in our mind, we thought we were, keeping people informed, and we had brought it a couple different places. And then I think we had to step back and say, okay, how did we miss the mark on that, and how could we get it in a more formal environment?
Yep.
And I think that's the key. I think it needs to rise to the level of being at a work session. I think we pay more attention, and it's a focused agenda item, and I think.
Yeah.
And generally, there is a little more meat to it, honestly.
Right.
We've gotten through some of the pieces that maybe in a retreat it seems more conceptual.
Right. Yep. I think it's good.
Good report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll plan, I think, taking away from this, we'll plan on coming then after that explore stage. So just a little heads up for you, we've been exploring a lot with Weequahic, and we feel like we're kind of ready to come to you and just get some feedback. So at some point in either this summer or in the fall, we'll probably be back with that. Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have some policy items. Graduation requirements.
I'm going to have them come up. Oh, you need a microphone?
I don't. Anyone wants to hear?
Okay. That's right. I don't have to talk. If you recall, last year we brought you a request to alter the graduation policy to accommodate the legislation regarding the civics exam. At the time the legislation was passed, the civics exam was required to be administered to every student, but students who had an IEP were not required to pass the exam in order to graduate. The legislature has since modified that legislation and is now indicated in their modification that through a student's IEP, a student could be exempted from even taking the civics exam. And so that is what is reflected in the change to the policy. Very slight change. Working with Mike Fries and Claudia Hendrickson, this is what we believe is in the best interest of our students.
Just additionally, we invited Mike to the table if you had any questions around the civics exam or any of those policy-related questions. He'd be available to answer any questions that you might have.
Any thoughts on what would indicate to an IEP team that they should exempt a child from taking
That's a good question.
exam, taking the civics exam?
I can tell you the legislative history was to address severe intellectually disabled students because you just can't administer the test, and the idea that a severe intellectually disabled student would have to even attempt to try to take the test, the legislature got a number of complaints.
Okay. Claudia, we're gonna
I was just going to say
weigh in on it.
that our intention is to have the students try the test first time and then have the team decide from there if the accommodations and modifications will be appropriate enough for them to be successful on the test. So we want to give them every opportunity to pass the test the same as their regular education peers.
So you wouldn't do the accommodations and modifications first based, you would, wouldn't you? Based
Ones that
on
are
your
already
regs?
listed that they do
Yes,
technically.
okay,
Correct,
thank you.
Correct.
Good.
But they're not even very clear about the accommodation modifications for
What
the
you could
state,
do.
so.
So you could, like, you could sometimes shorten the number of test questions in some cases for some students, and what that would do or not do,
Right.
Okay.
We have the ability to modify the way the questions are asked. I believe according to the law, we would have to ask all of the questions.
Okay.
But we would have to, we could look at modifications to the format and delivery of the questions.
Some of our counterparts who have tried in the districts surrounding us, who have given the sample exam out, have had much success. And the students that did not pass were not students with disabilities. They were students without. So we're confident that we can get our students to pass the exam without making it a burden on them.
So this year's a good year for us to give you just a quick update. So if I could just interject, I'll turn it over to Mike just to give you a little bit of update on what we currently put into place and what our experiences have been.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Smith. As you know, it's an unfunded mandate, and our team across the district has put in a number of hours to make this go swimmingly, and they've done a fantastic job. We've met at the district level with alt ed, assessment, special education, ESL, legal, technology, teaching and learning, equity, and communications departments to make sure we understood the mandate and understood what our options were, developed a plan for implementation, creation, and deployment of the test. And we have then worked with buildings over the past couple of months to begin that deployment. Essentially, our current juniors, anybody who graduates next year, are the first group that's affected by this. So our current juniors are for the most part, in a social studies class this year. So it seemed appropriate to try to take care of that for them this year and not, kind of pull them back next year when they weren't in a social studies class. And upon successful implementation of that, we've made it available to our current sophomores and freshmen, our teachers in those classes, to start kind of squaring that away, because we anticipate that in the future, 9th grade classes will be where this is taken. We've also recently worked on getting the translated versions in Spanish, and other languages will be up shortly. And we've come up with alternative opportunities, innovative settings for deploying the test. We also have established test prep modules for students that are in unique circumstances or may need to come in mid-year or move in the summer. We've done a lot of nice things so far, I think, to set students and teachers up for success. Big kudos to our staff so far. They're taking it very seriously. At last check, we're at 93% pass rate on the first crack at it. And that's out of 1,600 students tested so far. So we are very confident that we will be very successful. Even though it was an unfunded mandate, our staff has done a fantastic job and should be commended for their initial implementation.
What's required for passing to consider passing? It's 100 questions.
100 questions, and need to get 60 out of the 100 correct. Yep. So we're quite pleased with the success so far. and we're trying our best to make sure it doesn't take away from the robust social studies experience you know, we don't want this test.
Does the test have to be done all in one sitting?
I guess I don't exactly explain what you mean by that.
Well, 100 questions, I mean, do we have to give the test, here's 100 questions, or can it be broken up into?
We currently have it deployed in 3 segments in Infinite Campus, so that if we run into a situation where the testing environment is affected by the end of a class period bell, they would maybe finish that portion, and then we would have the second or third portion available. We've divided it according to the way that the test itself is sectioned off online, so that that helps us with the deployment and managing the time commitment. So
I would think, though, that could be one of the accommodations that we would use. Would be
naturally,
that, 20 one day for someone, 20 another, 20 that we could do.
we also believe that gives us flexibility in terms of anybody who isn't successful in the first attempt. We believe that we can use that information from the portions of the test to help them target areas of improvement to be successful. So,
a quick question. And I can't remember if we had talked about this before, but can the students take the test after freshman year, or do they have to wait till senior year? So let's say that they come in as freshmen and they take that initial civics class, and they've had some of that in middle school as well.
our intention is to embed it in that. For the most students, they'll take care of it during that ninth grade course experience.
And there's nothing from the legislature that says it has to be senior year.
No, no. It's just prior to getting a diploma, you've met the criteria, and the indicator on the transcript will simply read met civics test requirement, check. Okay. So it won't say their score. It won't indicate whether they have an IEP or anything like that. It'll just say that they met the requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris?
Perhaps you answered this, and maybe I didn't quite follow it well. Since it can be divided up into segments, and a youngster doesn't do well in a particular segment or two, do they have to take the whole test again, or do you think they could just take the segment?
Our interpretation is that they can take, that we look at what is the scenario to help them meet the expectation overall. So if our interpretation has been that if you only missed by a few questions, we identify the portion and we would maybe redeploy that portion for them as opposed to that. That's our interpretation. The law does not give guidance relative to why you would not be able to do that. So our interpretation is yes.
And that's one of the ways we wanted to accommodate students that were struggling with, who had disabilities also.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Let me know if you'd like to try the test yourself. Happy to give you a copy.
And Mike needs to get kudos for this because he really put a lot of time and effort into making sure every constituent was involved in this decision making.
Claudia, you can stay because the next 2 policies are yours anyway.
Okay. Employee possession use of weapons policy 522.8.
The legislature amended the Gun-Free Zone Act to permit off-duty officers and out-of-state officers and retired officers to be able to carry weapons on school grounds. However, the law did not prohibit school districts who employ those individuals as employees from prohibiting them to be carrying those weapons in their capacity as employees on school grounds. So there's just a slight modification to policy 522.8 that just makes clear that employees who fall in that category would not be permitted to carry weapons on school grounds. We did have a request that came in after that law was passed, so we wanted to make sure that the policy was... Just one.
A request to carry a weapon?
Yes.
School
Correct.
Yes.
A retired officer who is employed in a capacity here in the district.
So, this was the part that I just didn't quite get, and that is, okay, so you're retired, you're off duty, you're not one of ours, you're not our employee. So how would we have any, so do we do a background check on those people?
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Troopers.
let me ask a clarifying question. Do we
Yes.
do a background check on employees that we hire?
No, the people who want to
We wouldn't know.
be allowed to carry a weapon.
We wouldn't know.
The law has various provisions that they have to pass in order to be able to carry the gun. So
Correct.
that would be taken care of
But not
by law
by us.
enforcement. We would not know that.
We
But
would.
do they have to present their permit to
No.
carry?
No.
No.
We don't
No, I
even
mean,
know
could
they're
be a
carrying.
parent that's going into school
Yeah.
and is a retired officer, and they can carry a weapon,
And they don't have to tell us they're carrying one
No.
either,
No.
yeah.
because it's
Well, if
concealed.
it's concealed, we won't know. So.
Right.
Yeah, not even the cops can ask you if you have a concealed carry permit. So, all righty.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, it says out of state. Does that mean it could even be out of country?
I would not read the law to say that. Out of state would be the United States to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can argue the other way. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we'll write a law school exam.
There's fewer guns outside of the United States anyway.
They didn't
so.
ask me before they wrote.
It's true.
There is fear.
You go to the next one, weapons on school premises policy?
Yep. So this policy was amended to recognize the exact same change in the statute. We're also proposing, in the meantime, while we were working on this policy, we had a question come from the community regarding our armored trucks who pick up the money in our buildings. We have Garda service come and pick up all of the money, and those individuals are armed for obvious reasons. They're picking up money. So we just wanted to make sure the policy was clear that those individuals
They
are
have to
permitted to
carry
carry a service weapon. And there's a number of regulations and licensing and laws that govern that. So the policy is just to make clear that those individuals can
I'm
carry
okay
a
with
weapon.
that. I mean, our buildings are just one stop for many. I'm
Right.
cool with that. All right. Well, then let's all go home.
Sounds been cool.
Well, there's
3
no
hours
questions on that one.
ago.
That ends up the teaching and learning
All right,
segment.
next we'll go to
Nicely done.
organizational support. That'll be facilitated by Andrew Becker.
Okay, we have 3 discussion items. The first one under business and finance is short-term cash flow borrowing.
I tried finding a document, I couldn't find anything, but I know that I gave you guys an update here this fall, because historically, we've borrowed money for the term of a short-term note, which is 366 days, one more day than a full calendar year, or a full year. But we didn't need the money this fall. The reason is because of subtle.
You grab a microphone, Andy.
Gene and I are Are you gonna need it next? I will leave it there. Thank you, Dr. Langenfeld.
Thank you.
We did not need the money this fall. Subtle changes between state funds coming in, property taxes, the way payrolls fall and whatnot. We made me just a little bit nervous, but we did not need the money. So short of pursuing that, which there is a cost to having that money, last year we short-term borrowed $10 million at a cost of about $45,000. We did not need it at that time, and so we kind of waited to see where this year progressed, and we believe we need money for the period of about 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks, early to mid-May through mid to late June. We're still working on that. I used the term with Dr. Langenfeld. I said we're still dialing in. The way that we account for funds, all the audits are always clean. I don't want to confuse that, but the way that we account for our funds is just a little bit different. And so going through a process right now of reconciling past year's actual cash books to bank, and creating that, as well as this year's actuals up to date. So we're through March. It's tight again. Even as of the date that I wrote this, which was last Tuesday or Wednesday, things have changed a little bit. It's looking like we might not need it. We're very close, but we might not need to short-term borrow. I apologize for being vague, but it's a work in progress right now. So I know by the 18th or earlier, the latter part of the week before the board meeting when the documents are due for the board packet. I know that we will be dialed in exactly of what we would need with a recommendation. By then we would have finalized some agreements with some banks, solicited some proposals, and bring forward a recommendation if indeed we do need to borrow some money. Are there any, again, I apologize for the vagueness, but we're working through it. It's with Angie being out, Angie Robley being out, working through her staff. They've been great. We've got some assistance on this that we're coming up with some really good numbers that we've not had in the past.
Questions?
Yeah, just a comment when, sometimes we have that conversation about the fund balance, and I think sometimes there's a lack of recognition as to how the funds come to school districts and how we do have to, depending upon where our needs are at, short-term borrow. And it isn't just Green Bay, it's all school districts across the state that face that all the time. There's an ebb and flow and movement of money, and so you can have a very robust fund balance, but at different points, even for us, we have to short-term borrow. So it's just one of those parts of how the funding comes from the state and how the bills come in, so to speak.
It's very nicely put.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a comment, if you're trying to get your numbers in order to meet the deadline of our board meeting, and you think that if you had just a few more days, we may not have to do it, we could probably get a quorum together for a special board meeting to act on that.
Sure.
Rather than, spend the $45,000 if we don't need to.
Exactly. I do
So,
appreciate that offer. Thank you
could
so
do
much.
that.
I'm comfortable. I think we're about 99% of the way there.
Okay.
And usually, historically, when I've done this, you take that dollar amount and add about 10% to it as a little bit of comfort. And so I appreciate that offer. I'll keep
Okay.
that in mind, but I'm pretty convinced that we will get there.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, any questions on this one? Okay, we'll move that forward, and then under Human Resources, we have 2 discussion items. First one being Supervisor of Special Education job description.
Yes, both of these job descriptions are under special education, and the first one, as you said, is the Supervisor of Special Ed, and it is a new job description with some new duties, and so I think Kim had updated you about that, and Kim, if you want to make any other comments, or Claudia, about the role.
Yeah, we had talked about this at the last board meeting in closed session, and I shared with you that the Supervisor of Special Education position, we currently have a vacancy that Brendan Whitfield was in and then went to be the assistant principal, that we've been picking up the responsibilities of that position in a variety of ways over the last year. Then we had the 2 compliance specialist positions and the program evaluation position that we would like to elevate to the Supervisor of Special Education position that fits this job description, which would then allow us to have supervision of the program support teachers as well as the lead teachers that I discussed with you at that time. So this just captures, this job description captures that discussion and those roles. So we have 3 people that are currently in teaching positions that we would see moving into this position, the 2 compliance specialists and the program eval, and then we would have 1 vacancy that we would post for.
They would also help with the LEA discussion that we've been having and how we can fill behind the principals to support as LEAs at the elementary schools.
So if you recall, there were the LEA piece, and then also when we went through and I walked you through the budget piece of this, that this position plus those lead teacher positions, when we restructured the department, we were coming back with a budget neutral proposal.
The rate of pay, that was a question that was asked by a board member, will remain in the same pay group that the Brendan Whitfield's position was, which is $69,339 to a top of $80,627, and that's the scale after the board had approved the 1% increase, so that's the current scale.
And the people in those current positions that we are elevating are also receiving 30 days of additional time. Currently. So those 30 days of additional time will go away, as these will be 12-month positions, and that's what helps offset that increase.
Any questions on that one? All right, then we'll move that forward, and then our second and final human resources item is the lead teacher special education job description.
You want to give your
Sure. This again was in response, as you recall, when we had the conversation about the LEA coverage. Claudia pulled together two different task forces, I would call them, to talk about how we were going to address that change. Through those conversations, because we had piloted a lead teacher position at East High School last year, one of the recommendations was that we have those positions at all 4 of our high schools. In addition, we felt that we should have a lead teacher position at Washington. So we're proposing that this position have full release time during the day. They will be able to help with LEA coverage because we will professionally learn them to do so and then designate them. They are special education teachers, so they can serve in that capacity. And then in addition, they will be available in the buildings to help with coverage that needs to take place during the day. If there's a student that might be escalating, they can come in and help intervene. They also are able to transition students into the buildings quicker. In speaking with Lori Firk, she said that was probably one of the greatest benefits, was if a new student was coming in, they were able to get them in the building, into the classrooms, scheduled, IEPs taking place, everything much quicker than we were able to do in the past. And then the other benefit that we see is that this position would be able to also be in the classroom with teachers modeling and helping a teacher in the classroom with the student. And Lori said it was really helpful to have this position as they were trying to have students remain in the least restrictive environment and not in pullout. So this teacher is available all day to handle those responsibilities, and then the others that are listed. What this will also allow us to do is, because the high schools will have a lead teacher with full release, it allows us to take the already existing program support teachers that are in the positions. They will not have to cover the high schools and the one middle school, so it allows us to now put them into the remaining middle schools and elementaries more often because they won't have to cover as many different places. So we're hoping that that will also help at our elementary and middle schools.
Ed?
I think this is fantastic, but in terms of employment, 191-day contract, was consideration given to a longer contract for these lead teachers? I think of before the school year starts, after, wrapping up, any considerations for extending their contract?
I think one of the things that's nice here that I'm not familiar with in other districts always is the additional days that we're allowed to pay staff.
Mm-hmm.
So they can keep their 191-day contract, and then we can build into our budgets 10 additional days. Okay. Where they receive their, so our plan would be to build in those 10 additional days and then monitor whether or not that was enough that first summer. Yeah. And then maybe we have to look at 15 the next year. So that's where we plan to kind of pick up those pieces.
Because I think Ed in particular realizes how many transfers they are doing at the high schools in the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. So, and 10 days may or may not be enough, but we're going to utilize our supervisors that are 12-month to help backfill behind that to get those transfers expedited.
Schedules, and there's a ton of work.
We've also, I think, as we've tried to engage upon a more professional environment in the district, we've been able sometimes to be able to work with staff to flex days as well. So sometimes if they're willing to give us some extra time.
I didn't want to open that can of worms.
Yeah. But I mean, it's been helpful in other departments, and I think sometimes when we know we need someone, they're willing to come in, and then we can find a way to work that out if it's not budgeted. So, but our intention is to really use the additional days.
And provide them with the same level, if not more, of the professional development that we've given to the program support teachers so that they'll meet regularly with us, and they are going to report to the special education supervisor with input from the administrators.
So I think our last thought on that is that we know, and we're already planning the professional learning that's going to need to take place for the supervisors, the lead teachers, and the program support teachers, so that when we roll out and implement, it's successful right off the bat.
Could we go back to what Claudia said? Their immediate supervisor is not going to be the principal?
No, they'll be like this, like the program support teacher is.
No, I think,
I'm not sure I
think-
like that idea very much.
yeah, in my mind, the lead teacher will report to the principal of the building.
They should.
And then we support that, so we're almost co-supervising.
It does say the supervisor of special education, the position you just reviewed, so if we want to make any changes before you vote.
I really think that the building principal needs to be the supervisor with, assistance and support from supervisor of special ed. I mean, that's, they're going to be working so closely together.
Yeah, and if I could offer, having had a model similar and worked in it as a building principal, I was the supervisor, but it goes right to what you said. It was
Collaborative.
It was very collaborative because a lot of the professional development and pieces obviously came through the special education department. One of the things they did do though was the special ed department was part of the evaluation, and so they were responsible in partnership with the school principal to do the evaluations, because there are components that you would look for that maybe from
That's what we were thinking from our point of view, but I can understand what Mr. Dorf is thinking, and so we can make that change, that it'll be more collaborative.
I would be supportive.
The evaluation will be co-evaluated.
I think on our end, I really see us responsible for that professional learning piece, and then supporting the principal if there's a gap in production and doing the job. So, and I think we do that collaboratively.
Right.
I apologize, I didn't catch that.
What's that?
Well, what Ed caught, I'm glad it's caught.
Yeah, I think we had a conversation one day.
I
and then
looked
Tina
at it
worked
so
it.
many times and I didn't
Right.
see it, and I think it's a wise idea.
I think in my mind, it's that collaborative approach.
Right,
Just-
and that's what you just think of.
Anything else? Okay,
All right.
that's it.
All right, we're in closed session, I'll read that motion. Closed sessions is scheduled for Monday, April 4th in the district office building pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which if discussed in public would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, to wit, personnel matters, and pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, to wit, potential litigation matters. The meeting will begin in open session to consider the appropriate motion for a closed session so provided by law.
So moved.
Thank you for
Sandy?
Aye.
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 We're making good time.
What's your tomorrow?